Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Keeping It Real with Tiff and Carl. I'm Carl Rabun,
And I'm Tiff Salcido.
and we are two battered performers today. So we are coming to you from secluded spots where we are recovering from ailments, evidently. And Tiff looks like she's recovering from ailments on the beach there and in parts unknown.
I did just come back from the beach house. That's what I'm calling it, even though it's in the desert, but I can see the beach. And so technically it's a beach house. That's what I'm telling myself.
It's
I'm telling
nice. That's
myself
what
that.
that's what we want. That's what we want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, over the weekend, getting sick on the weekend in the summer, in a summer like this in California, it's just fun. It's fun. And so the last thing, getting over sick, I mean, I'm fine, but the last thing that always leaves for me is the cough.
Yes.
And my voice always has to come back, but the cough, it just persists. It's so annoying, you know.
You know what I saw
Have-
on TikTok? I don't know if this is true or not. I hate to spread TikTok misinformation, but someone said if you have a persistent dry cough that doesn't go away with medicine, to eat 15 mini marshmallows. And there's something about the mini marshmallows and the gelatin that coats the throat that stops the dry cough. Again, I don't know how true it is. It's from TikTok, but there are some things we've seen on TikTok that have changed lives. So I don't know.
yeah.
Try it. Tell me if it works. I don't.
Well, if the honey in this tea doesn't work, then marshmallows are going
15.
in the tea. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the ratio. I don't know what it is. 15 mini marshmallows. I don't know the science. I'm not a scientist,
Okay. Well,
but I am a
I'm
TikTok connoisseur. So
Tiff, I am not against, trying different things. I mean, I have, tried many different ways to cure ailments and sugar and tea and
mhm.
halls and vapor rub, or otherwise known as vaporub, right? And
Vaporub.
vaporu. And I mean, I know people who will crack eggs and put them underneath beds and try to see if you can just suck out the poison into the eggs. I don't know. What's a home remedy that you have heard of or that you use?
So a home remedy. Okay. I don't know if it's necessarily a home remedy. Well, when I was growing up, it was ginger ale, right? If you're
Mm,
sick, you just need a ginger ale. That's it. It'll cure cancer, it'll cure common cold, tuberculosis. You just need a ginger ale. Um, and chicken soup, right? Which
mhm.
still I think is very soothing and comforting. But what's my go-to when I'm feeling like as soon as I feel like the tickle in my throat, I do an Alka-Seltzer cold in an emergency. I mix them together. I call it my little cocktail. And so I take that as soon as I start to feel sick. This sickness, this one came like a wrecking ball. I don't want to start singing Miley Cyrus here, but we recorded our last session when we were together at the conference, and then I had to go from Sacramento to Monterey. About halfway through the drive, I felt like that telltale like burning in the nose, when you breathe in and it hurts a little bit. And
Yeah,
I said,
yeah.
oh, damn, I'm going to
Mhm.
get sick. But by the time I made the rest of that 3 hour drive, I was full fledged sore throat, stuffy nose, like fever, the works. Like that was, it came on so quick and it kicked my butt. I went to work the next day, which I shouldn't have, but in our work, we don't have the luxury of just like, oh, I don't feel well today. So I just told everybody to stay away from me. I wore my mask and kept my distance. But like the medicine gods were 100% against me that day because, again, the first night I was in the hotel, I didn't have anything with me except for like ibuprofen. The next morning, I didn't wake up early enough to go to get something before I went to work. And then at lunchtime, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go hit up Walgreens. Mind you, I'm in a town that I'm not familiar with. So I Googled to the nearest Walgreens and it's closed for construction. And so then I look for another one or CVS, anything, any kind of pharmacy. And the closest one was like 12 minutes on the other side. And I have like a half-hour lunch. And I'm like, I don't have time for this. I'll just die. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
So I just did get my cocktail. And I think that's why my thing has lingered as long as it has. But that's my go-to Alka-Seltzer Plus and emergency. What about you? What's your remedy? And I can't do vapor rub, by the way, because I'm allergic. Isn't that stupid? Isn't that the stupidest thing?
What?
Anything with menthol or peppermint, which menthol is made of peppermint oil, I'm allergic to. So I can't do
Hmm.
any of the good
Any
stuff.
of the good goods. Yeah.
None of the
Wow.
good. Yeah, ruined my
Well,
life. What are your remedies
I
when you're
just,
sick?
um, just, actually, I do this a lot already, but I drink a lot of water and I take a lot of tea. My mom, I grew up on throat coat and breathe easy, right?
Mm-hmm,
Those
mm-hmm.
herbal remedy teas. And so I've got a bunch of, my throat's not bad. It was just always it's been the cough, right? And so it was I had a bunch of breathe easy in there. My wife bought another packet. So I just take 2 bags and dip a little honey in it and, heat up some water. Um, a couple times I might add a shot or two of whiskey when I'm
Mm-hmm,
going to
mm-hmm.
bed, just to make my own little hot toddy. And it seems to help. But when it's work hours, it's just the tea and the honey. So,
Yeah.
but
No
that's
whiskey. It's frowned upon.
no whiskey. Yeah, yeah. People have a problem with, the smell of it, when you walk into
Right,
to a
right.
professional place, it's not vodka, but yeah, so that's what I grew up on, used to ginger ale. My mom used to give me 7 Up, flat 7 Up.
Flat 7 Up.
Yes,
Oh,
flat 7 Up. So, you didn't even get, I was like, it was nasty,
yeah.
you know.
It's funny when I have a sore throat. I don't care for McDonald's. I try not to go to McDonald's for anything, but
Hmm.
I gotta give McDonald's credit. They have the best Sprite, right? And I'm not a big Sprite drinker, but when I have a
Hmm.
sore throat, I want that super spicy Sprite from McDonald's, that
Yeah,
really super carbonated, because it
yeah.
just feels so good going down. That's another one that it's my go-to. Like I'll be dying, like I need to go to McDonald's to get one of them spicy Sprites. It cures
Spicy
everything.
Sprites.
Spicy
Spicy.
Sprite.
So that's a question. There's a question right there. So do you prefer, if you're getting a soda, out of the bottle, out of the can, or out of the fountain? Which one is you?
Oh, you know what? It depends. I'm gonna make a big fat it depends. Okay. Coke Zero is my go-to out of a can. Coke Zero out of can. And I prefer the 8 ounce cans over the 12 ounce cans. I like because I hardly ever finish a whole 12 ounce, but I love the 8 ounce cans of Coke Zero. Um, I also like Dr. Pepper, regular Dr. Pepper from the fountain. And
Okay.
I do not like most of the time, unless that's all that there is. I'm not a huge fan of soda out of a 2 liter unless it's like the first it's the bubbles for me. I want the
Yeah.
bubbles.
Yeah.
If there's no
Yeah.
bubbles, I don't want it. So a
Yeah.
flat anything soda, I'd rather like drink my spit. Honestly, I don't want a flat soda. That sounds disgusting.
It's funny. Yeah, I know 30 years ago, the bottom of the 2 liter is like the bottom of the 40, right? So
Nobody wants that.
no one wants the bottom of the
Yeah.
40. Yeah. But
And it's
yeah.
funny, I'm particular because even like Topo Chico waters, I like the Topo Chico water, but I like it out of the small plastic bottle, not the glass bottle. And those
Mm.
are hard to find. I buy them in Mexico and I bring them here. Honestly, when I go, well, I'm there more often now, so I don't have to smuggle them in anymore. But when I used to go and I would go like every few months, I would bring back like 3 or 4 cases of the
Wow.
Topo Chicos in the plastic bottle because I take that over soda. But if I'm going to have a soda, it's going to be one of those Coke Zero in a can.
No, I
Now I
hear you.
want one.
Yeah. No,
Now
I'm
I
I'm a
want-
I'm a seltzer water guy too. So I like bubbly and so bubbly out of a can. And I can drink that. I like it. I especially like it cold, but I can also drink it room temperature after a while because it just turns into water, right?
Mhm,
Or flavored water. But then if I'm going to drink a soda, I'd prefer to drink a soda out of the fountain, a Diet Coke
mhm.
out of the fountain, right?
Yeah.
2 liters are great, like you said, but then, people don't know how to keep 2 liters. And then, if multiple people are touching my 2 liters, they get flat. They don't
Mhm,
close them right. They lay them down in the fridge. Yeah, that's how you get flat soda. But
mhm, mhm.
there's a
There's a lot of
protocol to
things.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. There's a lot of things in my life I wish were flat, but my soda's not one of them.
yeah, I hear you. Yeah,
Okay.
very
So I have
cool.
a
So
question
yeah,
for you. I
sure.
got a question for you.
Yeah,
So obviously the 2024 Olympics are going on right now. I don't know if you've been like watching them. I've been catching like bits and pieces. Snoop Dogg is like my favorite thing at the Olympics right now. He's the funniest. I just love him so much. Um, but it made me think of like being a kid and watching the Olympics. And a part of that's because, we only had two channels, obviously, in our time. And at any given time, the Olympics were on. That's all you had to watch for at least,
yeah.
a few weeks. So my question is this: when you were a kid, if you watched the Olympics, what sport did you like know you could get a gold medal in, or think or want to get a gold medal in? Like, what was the sport where you're like, Carl could do that?
I'll tell you, yeah, I actually have a real answer to this, right? So, I remember being we had in our living room, we had one of those, this is so 80s, right? We had a
Mhm.
chair that was a round chair with a cushion, and when you took it off, there was a little trampoline on the bottom,
Ah, gotcha. Mhm.
right?
Mhm. I know the
And
chair.
and
Mhm.
it was brown and it had a skirt on it, right? So yeah, I'm sure any Gen Xer knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
And so I used to bounce on it, and I remember watching the 1984 marathon, which was the first women's marathon in the
Mhm.
Olympics. And I remember for some, I think I got up early. It might have been I was looking for cartoons and the marathon was on instead of the cartoons, right? Because I used to get up early on Saturday mornings for cartoons,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so, anyways, for whatever reason it was there, I was up early and I was watching the marathon, and so I was hopping on the um on the little trampoline chair, and I ran the entire marathon or hopped the
Oh,
entire 2 hours and change while Joan Benoit, she won the marathon. So I ran the marathon with
nice.
her. And I remember telling my mom, I said, I ran the marathon with her. And she was like, no, you didn't. And I said, well, yeah, I did. I was hopping on that, right? And it was funny because I used to think I could run, right? And I'm not the fastest. I'm quick, but I'm not the fastest, right? I was
Mhm.
made to play baseball, right? But give me short little sprints. Don't ask me to run distances. But I thought I could do it. I used to sign up for like races and stuff when I was in school. And I remember people were like, well, can I do it? I think I might be a little better at it. No, I'm going to do it. And I always came in last in the long distance, like the 600
Mhm.
yards. But I was hard headed. I thought, well, I ran that marathon. I could, no,
No.
no. But, I guess so. Maybe that's what I thought I could do. I thought I could run a
Okay.
marathon.
So
Yeah. How about
running.
you?
Okay.
Yeah.
I was convinced that if I got the right coach and gym that I could be the uneven bars.
Hmm.
I am gymnast. Okay, gymnast, because
Hmm.
it was the uneven bars. And the second thing that I was obsessed with was the balance beam.
Hmm.
And I was mesmerized by the young, well, all of the gymnasts. I can't just say the young gymnasts, but all of the gymnasts. Gymnastics is my favorite
Hmm.
Olympic sport, with the second, my very, very close second, figure skating.
Yeah.
So I was convinced that if I had the right training, I could conquer those uneven bars where they just like flip and switch and do. I mean, the athleticism that goes into that. But that's what I was convinced I could do because I did play on the monkey bars at school. So I figured it's, almost the same exact thing. Um, but I have zero athletic capacity, zero. I mean, there's the only thing I could do at the Olympics now is I could be a judge because I am good at judging. I've been practicing for years. And so I'm pretty sure that I could get a gold medal in judging. But doing anything, absolutely not. Those athletes are just amazing, phenomenal. I can't even like the work that goes into that. I can never be so dedicated to absolutely anything in this
Yeah.
lifetime. It's
No, I,
amazing.
I hear you. And I love the Olympics too. And I mean, I try to all the politics aside and everything else like that. I just love it. It's the competition, and I've just I heard a podcast yesterday where a guy was talking and he says, what I realized with the Olympics? I'm a patriot. They're like,
That's
why? He says,
right.
'cause I want the Americans to win, and it's true. I want the Americans to win. I always want the Americans to win. And at the end of the day, that's where my allegiance lies. Win, lose, or ride or die. I guess that's who I am. But I used to, when I was younger, not as a child, but just when I was younger, I'm like, what could I do? I mean, I'm getting older here. What type of Olympic sport could I do? I wanted one of those Olympic ring tattoos, right? I'm jealous of
Right.
those, right? Those are so cool.
Yeah.
And but it's like, I mean, archery or shooting, is there, I don't know, could we play like spades or dominoes or something? I mean, I could, is there something I could, what would you like to make an Olympic sport so that you could get your Olympic rings? That's my
It
question.
it would be a drinking game, very much so.
There you
So
go.
flip cup, flip cup.
Mm,
I might be able to win flip cup. Um, beer pong. I'm not that great at beer pong, but I might get a bronze in beer pong. Um,
just get on the
but
podium.
drinking games. If there was a drinking game, King's Cup, I would get a gold in King's Cup.
Mm,
If you don't know what King's Cup is, then you're not ready for the sport. It is definitely one of the elite drinking games. Not
wow.
for the
Well,
weak, not for it's not amateurs. It's definitely Olympic level sports. I think I might be a sorority frat person on the inside. Um for sure. Because I don't think
okay.
about like exercise and I'm not like, oh, I could do archery or bocce ball. No, bocce ball. I don't even know if that's a real sport. Is that a real sport?
It's a real sport. I just
Okay.
played bocce ball last week at a retirement party.
Because
Yes.
the bocce balls I was
Yes.
thinking of right now are the ones from they probably have a different name, but from Paisanos in Sacramento and Davis, they have these deep
Yeah.
fried pizza dough balls. Those are the bocce balls I was thinking of. I could get a
Paisanos
gold
has
medal
bocce
in
balls.
those bocce balls. I could get a
Wow.
gold medal in those. Have you had those before?
No, I have not had Paisanos bocce balls.
Listen, they're deep fried pizza dough
Hmm.
that they serve to you in a pool of butter and garlic and Parmesan cheese. And this is why I'll never be skinny. The, I will get a gold medal in Paisanos bocce balls. There you go.
Damn, now I can't go to Paisanos.
And if you pair it with their sangria, which by the way, you can get in a pitcher. It's not on the menu. You just have to ask, and they'll bring you a whole pitcher. Um, that is an Olympic sport I can get onto. Sangria and bocce balls dipped in butter, garlicky butter sauce. Yum.
By the way, this portion of Keeping It Real with Tiff and Carl has been brought to you by Paisano's Italian restaurant in Davis and Sacramento.
And
Yeah,
Midtown
in
Sacramento.
Midtown Sacramento.
You know
Yes,
why I
there
like
is
the
a
one in
difference.
Midtown? The reason I like the one in Davis, but I like the one in Midtown. And the reason I like the one in Midtown, this is again, drinking can be an Olympic sport. It's right across the street from Fieldwork. And Fieldwork, great beer.
Hmm.
And their hummus, the hummus at Fieldwork, 10 out of 10.
And Zocalo's right there too. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's a wine bar right around the corner. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a real cool, chill wine bar.
Yeah,
Like after you've stumbled out of Zocalo's and
yeah.
Paisano's, it's a place to like
Mm-hmm.
sit on a couch and have a glass of Merlot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, very
Anyways,
cool.
so that's for the Sacramento travel tourism industry. There you go.
Right?
Capital
Yeah.
is that Capital Street? I don't even know what the street is. I just my heart tells me where to go. My heart, I say field work and paisanos, and my body just takes me there. I don't know what the address is, but I
It's
think
not
it's
on
Capital.
Capital. It's not Capital. I think it's T. I believe it's
I'm
T.
gonna Google it right now. You
It
think
might be
about that.
T. Might be T. Right. But yeah, and so yeah, because it's either T or R. It's RST when they're in the alphabet there, but it's on the other side of Capital. So yeah, but yeah, so yeah, that's definitely, that's the thing with Sacramento. You
It
just
is
got to know
Capital. It
it's
is on
it's
Capital.
it's on Capital.
It is on
Oh, wow.
Capital. It's on Capital and 18th Street,
Okay,
and Zocalo is
okay,
right next to it, right there.
yeah, right across the street. Yeah,
Yep,
yeah. There's a breakfast place that has gluten-free menu. That's
sounds
like
horrible.
up the street. No, no, it was
No,
bomb
just
actually, to tell you the truth, because my daughter is she's gluten sensitive, so she wanted to try it. It was amazing. It was amazing. And so yeah, so whenever she wants to go again, we can go. I found something good.
love it, love it. I will say that's one thing that's missing from where I live. In Southern California, we don't have any good breakfast places here. Like
No.
they have mid ones, but there's not breakfast is like one of my favorite meals. And
Mhm.
like breakfast foods. I don't necessarily eat early in the morning, but I like a good breakfast food around 11, 12 o'clock. But there's nowhere around here that's like exciting. Nothing.
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
not in my town. Like if I drive out, if I go to Orange County or go into Riverside, there are, but where I live at, it's like mid at best. It's not.
Farmer boys. Yeah.
No. Enough. But I wish
Yeah.
that's one thing I wish here. In my new town, um there is some pretty good breakfast places, and they have these the like local cuisine or these little burritos. They're like
Mhm.
tiny little rolled burritos, but they're only
Hmm.
like less than $2 in American dollars. But people are on the corner selling them everywhere, and they're delicious. We've been trying out all of the local vendors to see which one's our favorite, and I think we have a winner right now. Um,
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
she's right outside our gates of where we live at. And so, but she
Okay.
sells out real fast. So if we're not early, we're hungry. You're
Mm.
early or you're hungry.
So you're up with the chickens then. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right
yeah.
on.
So
Yeah, I'm lucky to be in Sacramento where there's many different places to go and good quality stuff, So, but and my daughter wants to try them all, so we try them probably once a week, once every weekend we go try a different place. And
nice.
we have some go-tos, but there's it's good to be able to have options that way.
Well, it's funny because we're my husband and I are going back and forth between here and Mexico. It's only like four
Mhm.
and a half hours, 5 hours, but it's a journey. And so we come through the desert. So we're going through like Imperial County,
Hmm.
Calexico, Indio, Coachella, all
Imperial.
of that back
Yeah.
up to where we live. So we have like this routine because it's a lot of like dead space between like the border Calexico and the next big town is Indio. And
Hmm.
so yesterday, like our routine now is we always stop at the Ono Hawaiian barbecue. That's like our midpoint where we
Yeah.
stop and we eat, and we always get the same thing. And so we were sitting there yesterday, and I was like, we were just like I don't know if you get on your phone or whatever, like a year ago today you were here, a year ago
Yeah.
today you were there.
Yeah.
So a year ago this last month we were in Italy, and so I kept getting pictures every day of like, oh, this you were in Venice, oh, you were in Parma, oh, you were in Bologna. So I was looking at all the food pics because I'm one of those people. I'm one of those people that takes pictures
Mhm.
of all my plates and whatever.
Me
And
too.
so as we're eating at that Ono Hawaiian barbecue, I was like, the food culture here is so different from like abroad that we
Mhm.
have all of these chain restaurants which is, I mean, it's not a terrible thing, but you get the same thing in the same place anywhere you go. So if I'm at Ono Hawaiian Barbecue in Indio, it's going to taste the same as if I'm in Moreno Valley or if I'm in Sacramento or whatever. And I'm not saying that that's not a good thing, but there's like no imagination to our food here. And so when I
Mhm.
was like looking back in Italy, they didn't, I'm sure they have chains, but like when you go, you're getting regional food. Like everywhere you eat, it tastes like that region. It's got its
Mhm.
own like sazon. I don't know a better word for it, but like everything has its own vibe. And here, everything is just same, 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 same. Unless you can find a good like location that has a bunch of like private mom and pop, shops.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
so hard. It's so hard to find, at
Yeah.
least in California. There's
Well,
very few unless you find a good downtown.
yeah.
It's almost all chain, same thing, food.
Yeah.
It's we're I don't know.
Well, yeah, it's a challenge, right? And I remember when I first moved to Sacramento, I noticed, they had the best of Sacramento and the best of area, in magazines, and they had all these, original restaurants and original places. I grew up with a corner grocery and having been able to get a sandwich, with different things, an Italian sandwich, and
Right.
and with people make them in different ways, and I growing up in San Francisco and in the Bay Area. I mean, there's such a diversity, right? Without the chains, so much. But it was funny, moving up to Sacramento. When they talked about Sacramento, there's a bunch of places that were original, and like my favorite hamburger place, like Squeeze In. It has a cheese skirt, which is original and things like that.
Mhm.
But They started talking about like the best sandwich, like in Roseville and in the suburbs, right? And when they started doing the suburbs, they started going to chains like Beach Hut Deli, right? Which is
Hmm.
a great place to get a sandwich, but it's a chain. It's not. I mean, the original Beach Hut. Where is the original Beach? Does anybody know, right? You know, and it's the best place to get a coffee, Dutch Brothers. Dutch Brothers is great, but it's a chain, right? So where are
Hmm.
these? You know, but you figure, you know, the more that you're out in the suburbs, maybe the less, you know,
Right. Variety.
variety, or they're less originality or
Mhm.
historical background. I mean, you know, some of the restaurants that they were talking about in Sacramento or in San Francisco have been around for 60, 70 years, right?
Yeah.
I remember when I was a freshman at Davis 30 years ago, there was nothing. I mean, there was nothing past Sacramento and Roseville. I don't even think the mall
Hmm.
was built yet, right?
Right. Right.
And so those places like that. I mean, Rockland used to be where the 49ers trained, and it was Sierra College, and it was like a rural college, right? Almost. And so it was, you know, something where just this urban development has really created these needs to replicate, you know, so I want something that reminds me of home, right? So, and I think that's where we get it. So yeah, it does kind of flatten out the I mean, you have variety, but it kind of flattens out the palate in terms of, like you said, the regional food, right? But you know,
Right.
then again, I mean, we live in California, which is its region, right? You know, and so, but you know, I mean, but you know, I grew up in San Francisco where I figure I feel like I always, whenever I get Mexican food or Chinese food, I always put it up to, okay, look, I grew up in San Francisco. So, I mean, you know, I grew up with authentic stuff. So,
Right.
you
Right.
know, and so that's really where my bar is. So when I find a little taqueria like in Merced or Madera or something else where they really try to, you know, they put a little love into it, you know, that's a place that I always think about when I go back there to visit.
Yeah. It's funny too because I like we have a rule when we travel,
Mhm.
like no chain restaurants. I mean,
Yeah.
like when we're traveling, like exploring. Obviously, on this road trip, like there, I'm not going to go explore India. I'm not that interested in getting to know India. I'm sure there are places, but I'm saying a lot of times it's just convenient. But when we travel, we no chains. It's absolutely like forbidden. And I remember one time my husband and I we were doing a road trip and we ended up in Pismo, but we got to Pismo late
Hmm.
and the only thing that was open was Applebee's. And I was so pissed at him.
Yeah.
And I threw like a little temper tantrum and I said, I can't believe we're in Pismo Beach and we're eating at freaking Applebee's. Like I am so annoyed right now.
The
And
Splash
he's like,
Cafe closes at 8:30. That's why. Yeah.
yeah, no, everything closed.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we like to
Yeah.
go to the Crack Crab. That's our favorite place in Pismo,
Oh,
but it
okay.
closed at like 8 o'clock. And I'm
Yeah.
like, if we're here eating late night Applebee's, like I'm so annoyed right now. And so he makes fun of me all the time because I'm not usually in a bad mood. I'm almost happy 99% of the time. But when I'm cranky, it is very apparent that I'm not happy. And I remember our waitress came up and was like, are you guys going to do karaoke tonight? And I'm like, absolutely not, right? I have this little bitch face on. I'm like, absolutely not. And she's like, oh, because you have a karaoke face. And my husband is laughing so hard because he knows how pissed off I am at the moment.
Oh my
He says,
God.
you almost killed that lady with your look. Because when she said, you have a karaoke face, I'm Medusa.
Oh,
Like, what?
oh,
So
yeah.
that's a running joke. That had to be at least 10 years ago. My husband still makes fun of me all the time. You have a karaoke face. I'm like, shut up. Nobody asked
Like,
you.
does Tiffany Salcido have to slap a chick? Right.
No,
Yeah.
no, I'm not allowed to do that. That's frowned upon. Did you can't
That's
drink
right.
whiskey at work and you can't go around slapping people.
Well,
That's the
yeah,
rule. That's the
that's
rule.
part of professional culture, right? You know,
That's right. Culture. Ooh,
culture. Yeah.
I like
And
culture.
so, yeah, and not the cultures that are growing within us, but
No,
you know,
quick,
but yeah,
you aggravated my cultures right
right. No, yeah, yeah. The topic we're talking about today is culture,
now.
and
Hmm.
you know, just thinking about the cultures that we live and work in, right? And how powerful they are, how pervasive they are, right?
Yeah.
And you know, where cultures come from, you know, and it's a lot of people talk about how do you build culture? How do you create culture? And, it's important, it's going to build, whether you like it or not. One thing's for certain, a culture will form an organization. It's up to you to decide, whether it's the culture that's going to be good for business, bad for business, good for your organization, bad for your organization, right? And so, culture is built through what we do and what we say, but also what we don't do and what we don't say. So it's important to have an idea of what do you want, right? And how do you want it to be done
Mhm.
within your organization? So I mean, it's so powerful.
I know the way, the thing I think about with culture, it's like the vibe. Like, what's the vibe where you work at? Is it one where you can come in and be yourself and be honest and authentic and do your best work and have good ideas and have bad ideas and nobody thinks of you worse for the wear either way? You just let's figure it out, or is it one that's full of contradiction and do what I say and not what I do, or this is who we are on paper and we'll enforce it when it's convenient for us, but we're also going to let, you know, whatever else happen, or I don't know. It's complicated. I've worked in places that have really great culture. I've worked in places that are incredibly toxic. I can say I've been the toxic. I've been the toxic before, because not having the skill set to manage like the contradiction, you know. And I've also been like the voice of reason and like we can do better. There's everybody contributes. I think culture is it's collective, but I think it can be individual as well. Like, what do individuals contribute to the dynamic, the vibe of the workplace? Because you can have a good culture and one person comes in and it just messes everything up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So how do you set the tone, right? What do you want to do? How do you want to, what do you see your workplace wanting to be like? What do you want it
Mhm.
to look like? How do you want people to act in it? Right. And there's like, well, we're the organization that gets
Mhm.
results. We get things done. Yeah. And some people will get things done at all costs,
Right.
and what type of culture does that build? I mean, you have churn and burn, right? We get results and we leave trails of bodies behind us, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
if that's a culture that you want, then you invest in a lot of talent management because you're gonna have lots of turnover, right? You're gonna have
Right.
lots of issues with hostile work environments and fair labor standards and things like that, and so that's the thing. I mean, just think about it. I was going to ask you, in terms of your culture, you said you've been in good cultures. What was what was a culture, that you were in, or what were the behaviors of that culture? What was it that made it such a good culture?
So for me, it's like I want to be connected to something that means something. Okay.
Hmm.
Like, you can make money in lots of ways. Again, work is not something I think that many of us get to choose. Like, if I could really choose, I would be independently wealthy and be a trust fund kid if I could choose. And I
Hmm.
would do stuff, but I wouldn't have to work. But most of us are not that fortunate. We do have to work to make a living. And so we don't I don't think people necessarily want to spend their time doing something that doesn't have meaning, right? So when I'm thinking about workplace culture, I'm thinking about like where is somewhere that I can be that um share values with, that we believe in something. This is why I've stayed in human services so long. I didn't start human services for anything noble. Where I lived at, you worked for the phone company, the school district, or the county. And I had worked for the phone company and I hated it. I don't like kids, so I wasn't going to work for the school. So the county was the only option. That's how I got in there. But what I really fell in love with was the ability to help people that were in need. And so
Hmm.
it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of like growing knowledge. But at the end of the day, like, your work makes somebody's life better. And I really, really bought into that. And so the very first county that I worked in, it was really interesting because the culture was a mixed bag of really good and really bad, like at the same time, like simultaneously. So on a macro level, like high end, we had a really progressive, forward thinking director, Anna Pagan. I'm sure you've met her. She works with UC Davis and different things. She
Mm,
wasn't, I would say, widely popular because she drove a hard, there was no messing around on her watch. She would call you on your crap. Even now, like I talked to her as a peer, and she would tell me, do you remember in my office I had these posters and this and that? And I said, I don't remember anything from your office, because anytime I got called to your office, I had my tail tucked and my head down because I knew I had messed up and I was about to get a tongue lashing. So there was no looking at your posters on the wall. I was fighting for my life. But as that culture of accountability on that macro level, where I didn't work directly for the director at the time. She would say, hey, you made a mistake, come here, I want to talk to you about it. Like that, like culture of accountability was huge. And that's the good part of the culture of accountability, saying you have potential and you're not living up to it, get it together. What do you need to do to get it together? And really like calling me on my crap, because remember, I'm influential. I can navigate around and I can talk my way out of anything. But she didn't let me get away with anything. And I was like, she's everywhere. I can't do it. Right. But it was great. But it was great in that sense. She was really like trying to grow like out of what we've always done and move towards the future of what human services was going to look like. So very innovative, very creative. She really brought people together. So that's on a macro level, like a really good example of culture. And I really thrived in that environment. And
mhm,
simultaneously, on the lower levels, there was a lot of negative culture there because it was a lot of drama, gossip, tattletaling, do what I say, not what I do. A lot of people nitpicking, and it was like very competitive because, again, this is one of the few industries that were in that area. It was almost like primal.
mhm,
If I succeeded, that means that there's not room for everybody to succeed. And so it was very competitive and a lot of like undermining each other, and um, just a lot of drama, for lack of
mhm.
any better word, a
Well,
lot of drama, infighting, interpersonal conflict, and there was no mechanism to manage it at a micro level. And so it was really unhealthy there. So in that sense, it's like when you were involved in the big level stuff, fantastic, thriving. And then you would go down to the lower level, like with your team and stuff, and it was a lot of not good stuff. And again, this is where I have to own up. I was part of that. I didn't have the skill set to manage some of that toxicity. And so I
mhm.
actively contributed to it because I didn't know any other
Yeah.
way. This was my very first big grown up job. So I didn't know how to manage that. I've learned it now, kind of, sort of. Still a work in progress, but I'm definitely not. I don't engage in it as much as I used to. I used to feel very defensive, like I had to defend myself, and now I'm like, be mad at me somewhere else. I don't have time for this.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Tiff, with the idea of, if you were in the upper echelons of the organization, it's a different conversation than what you're doing with the line staff. Because I have experienced that too, but just even with Gallup in their last survey that for organizational cultural research, and they release it every quarter. So the for the first quarter in 2024, you know, they asked the question, I feel connected to my organization's culture, and 37% of leaders strongly agreed, but only 16% of individual contributors agreed,
Mhm.
and only 17% of their managers agreed. So leaders, they're closer to the idea of culture because they talk about culture. They talk about the organization and the direction that they want to go in, right? It's the difference between a leader and a manager, right? A manager is somebody who takes care of the day to day, right? I always talk about in reference to a ship, right? Leadership, I mean, management is making sure that the engine's running smoothly, that the beds are made, that the electricity's on, that the food is being prepared, that, the housekeeping is done correctly, that those individual things that we take care of every day to make sure that everything is moving in a direction. And leadership is the folks who are steering the direction we're going in,
Mhm.
right? So they are charting the course and they are letting us know when we are, moving in the right direction and when we're not. And so it's more that transformational process rather than the transactional, right? So, but when you're in the weeds, when you're in the transactional process, when you've got people who are dealing with existential crisis and not dealing with it very well and coming at you in ways that maybe, you're not used to or you think is appropriate, it can be very difficult to keep that idea of the bigger picture and where we're going if you don't have to think about it very much. And so it's so important, right? When leadership, and I've been having these conversations with leaders and they talk about the direction that our department's going in. And it's like the direction your department's going in, if it's not backed up by the actions of your staff, then it's really going
Mhm.
to, be a challenge if you're not in touch with what is going on a day-to-day level. And it's impossible to do that as, the further you go up, the further you are away from, the end user, right? The customer,
Mhm.
and the person working with the customer in those customer facing positions. So it's important to keep those levels of communication going through. So having that culture of accountability, a lot of times the communication by the time it gets to leadership is, well, there was something wrong. What happened? Oh, well, this person made this mistake and they fixed it. Right.
Mhm.
And so what comes back down? It's a culture of blame, right? So accountability, when we just think of accountability as identifying who messed up, I mean, what is that solving,
Right.
right? As opposed to accountability is, yeah, I made a mistake, but if I'm not accountable for being able to recognize the mistake that I made and to be able to learn from that in a supportive way, without the sniping, without the knives coming out and saying, "Oh, yeah, how long have you been here? You should know this, and you should already be doing this." And
Right.
and it really is a challenge, right? So sometimes when we talk about a culture of accountability, I love a culture of accountability. For me, the culture of accountability means that I recognize that I'm accountable for my work and I'm accountable for the impact of my work on other people, right?
Mhm.
And so it doesn't mean that I just say, yeah, I messed up. How many people can say I messed up and apologize? How many people are really good at apologizing and just continuing to make the same mistake,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You know?
For me, when I'm thinking about accountability, and this, like, I'm huge on accountability. It is not about punishment. Accountability is not punitive. That's not the type
Mm,
of accountability that I'm equating accountability
right.
with. For
Mm-hmm.
me, accountability equals ownership. Like, this is what you did, both good and bad. Because accountability is comprehensive. It's, you did this well, own it. You did this not so well, own it. But the other part is the invitation to think differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want? Like, what can you learn and extract from this? Like, this is the mistake that was made, right? You made the mistake, or I made the mistake, whoever. But it's not about blame, it's just ownership. I messed
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And now that I know, what would I do differently next time, or how could I do this better next time? Because I have to own the impact. I
Yeah.
don't think most people make mistakes intentionally.
Mm,
I think all of us would love to be perfect, but we're not. And it's like the ability to say, yeah, you know what? Someone called me on my mistake, and I'm not going to blame them for bringing it up. I'm not going to be defensive because they brought it
yeah.
up, but I can say, you know what? You're right. I had different information, maybe, or I learned it a different way, or this is what I was told to do before. It's not about blaming, but what do you want me to do next? What's the next step? Or
Right.
how can I do it better next time? Or what do you need from me so
Yeah.
that this is a better interaction? And then being able to move into that, because saying, yeah, I made a mistake is part of it. But you really have to, it's about growth. That
Yeah.
that's the culture of accountability, is growth.
Yeah.
And that means owners, leaders too have to take ownership of their mistakes as well,
Sure.
mistakes in communication, mistakes in contradiction, mistakes in not putting the right people in the right place, or that game of telephone where we don't, like, I have an open door policy. Just knock twice before you come in, and then I'll decide if it's important to listen to. Like, I had a regional manager do that one time. This is where I learned this was the culture. This was one of the most toxic. I won't name that county, but anyways,
Yeah.
this regional manager came in and she gave this beautiful speech like, oh, I want to be here for you all. I have an open door policy. If you ever have questions or concerns or ideas, please let me know. I'm open to change. And I was like, bet, right? So excited. I wrote this long email about like things that I noticed and things that we could change and how we could make the job easier and how we could make it better for customers. And then I get called into my supervisor's office, my supervisor, and she
Mhm.
says, you emailed the regional manager directly? And I'm like, yeah, she told us to. She said, if you have concerns or questions or ideas, to email her. And I did. She's like, no, no, no. If you have any questions or concerns or ideas, you bring them to me. And if I deem worthy, I will take them to her. But you never contact the regional manager directly. And I'm like, then why did she say that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Why did she say it? So I was like, okay, that's the vibe here. This is the culture here where take initiative, but don't, right? I want you to take care of the customer, just do it under 12 minutes. Or the most important thing is accuracy, but we all do it our own way. I said, oh, I'm going to be a short
Mhm.
timer here, short
Yeah.
timer. And I was. I didn't stay
Yeah.
for very long.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing. I mean, that's the thing. Different people have different definitions, and different ideas. It's you know how a lot of people say, well, I always tell them my door's open, or if they have anything that they need, they can come talk to me. I always offer that. Well, you
Formative.
know, it can be performative because I mean, even
Yeah.
if you are willingly saying, I, it's like I have this class that I teach, and it's thinking about the idea of office hours, right? And people barely come to office hours, and I'll sit on Zoom for an hour, and people won't show up, maybe one or two if I'm lucky, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I turn it into a question and come to me and talk to me about this, and now all of a sudden I have three or four people that'll pop in, and three or four people that'll come into a conversation and create this
Mm-hmm.
conversation. So just having that availability, hey, I'm
Mm-hmm.
there if you need me. But I mean, and just I mean, I don't know if you're like me, like, okay, I have this problem. I'm going to try to solve it first. I'm just going to try to figure it out. I don't want to bug that other person, right? That's who I am. So some people won't come talk to you just because they don't want to seem to be a bother or that they're needy,
Mm-hmm.
right? But for me, it's, how do we make that, it's just like when I coach leaders and have that conversation. Well, I asked them if they need anything just to let me know. I said, okay, but how about if you say, what are you working on this week? Okay, so what specifically can I help
Mm-hmm.
you with on this task? That is a different tact. It's a different posture. It is proactive. It is assertive. It is telling them that I am here truly to assist you, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to my door is always open if you want to come by,
Right.
right? Which is an offer, which, like you said, sounds performative. And a lot of people will take it as performative or take it as, well, I don't really need that help, as opposed to, well, this is something that maybe I could use a suggestion. And how many people are going to go to their boss for a suggestion? How many people should go to their boss for a suggestion? That would be an awesome way to use a boss as a mentor, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, so changing it around from that offer of assistance to actually actively, you know, putting your hat into the ring. How can I help you on this
Mm-hmm.
specifically, right? The more specific we are, better results we'll have in that situation. But that's about being accountable, right? I'm accountable to my team. What does that mean? I'm accountable to their ideas, to how they're doing, how they're feeling, right? I'm not just accountable to the results that we have, right? And results don't always necessarily just grow based off of, just personal, you know, um, personal performance. It's really about the environment you're in, right? And that's why we talk about mission and vision and values and how we do things so much, right?
Well,
It's important. Yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
No, I see, and I think that that's important to like. I know, like from a management perspective, we have to have a way to measure results, right? This is how we're
Yeah,
accountable to our stakeholders. This is how we're accountable to our funding sources. So there always has to be some type of measurable results. But this is where I think a lot of people get confused and the culture gets muddy, is that the mission, vision, and values and the what we're measuring in terms of results and how we evaluate your effectiveness are totally misaligned. So to give you like an example of this, I worked in employment services for a long time. And the goal or the mission, vision, and values was ultimately to get people off of cash aid and into employment. We wanted them to have long-term employment. We wanted them to have education. We didn't want them just to have jobs. We want them to have careers so that they can get off aid forever and always, right? That's the
right.
goal. How are we measured? Now, when you're looking at what were the results that were used to measure my effectiveness as an employment counselor, there were three main things that we measured. Number one, how much engagement did we have? Meaning, in the welfare work activities, like how many people were doing their required 20, 30, or 35 hours a week. So that was one thing that we measured. The second thing that we measured was how many people had employment 15 hours or more per week. And then the third one was employment stability. How many people kept that job for a month or more? Now, all three of these things I have zero control over. Okay, zero. And let's say I had great results. That means that people were doing their hours and still on cash aid. They were employed 15 hours a week or more and still on cash aid. And that means that they were keeping their job a month or longer. And guess what? Still on cash aid. So my results were connected to me keeping people in the program and not getting off of cash aid, which is completely opposite of what our mission, vision, and values was. And so I would take the hit. And I didn't care because my thought process was I'm more interested in these people having better lives than working the program.
Right.
So what do you need? How do I help you get there? Because my job is to get you everything you need so you can be off of aid for the rest of your life. And so when I measured my own effectiveness, I was like, how many people did I get off of cash aid this month? And that messed up, by the way, my results. Because as soon as I got people off of the program, then my numbers would go down.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't care. I was going to get a meets on my performance evaluation either way, whether I did exceptional on my numbers or not. It was going to be the same thing. It wasn't about my individual results. It was about that. But not everybody thought that was not the culture at the time. I was definitely an outlier.
Mm-hmm.
I was definitely an outlier. And that was one of the reasons I had such a disconnect with that particular organization. What you want and what you tell me to do don't match up, and I have a really hard time with that.
Yeah. We had a old workshop that had been around for a long time, and the person that ran it was, a personal friend and everything. And but he worked for EDD, and he had a I think he had a stat like 87%, or I think their ADD workers, had 87% of the folks that went through the class found a
Mm-hmm.
job, right? And that was the stat. That was the stat that they had. It was a
Mm-hmm.
2 day class, learn how to do a resume, learn how to answer interview questions, and learn how to dress appropriately, right? And so 87% of folks who went through that class found a job with the job leads and everything. So that's a pretty good stat, right? But that's, what they weren't looking at was how many people were coming back,
Mm-hmm.
how long were they
Yep.
keeping that job, and was there, if there was a revolving door, which a lot of our workers were feeling, what was it? Well, I didn't have childcare set up, or my childcare flaked on me, or I ran out of gas, or I didn't have any, I don't have any money for transportation, or the time management thing. I had to get my kid to school, and I don't know how am I going to do that and pick him up and things like that, or just even a customer yell at me, and I'm not going to put up with that, and I'm not going to have my boss talk to me like that, and And so none of that was taken into account, in terms of that stat, we got people jobs. And if
Yeah.
that's like saying, it's like when people say, well, if they just got a job, then it would solve all their problems.
No.
And, we know it goes way deeper than that, right?
Mhm.
So when we created our workshop with Kern County, it was when the conversation was, okay, so helping people to get through the interview process, cool. But what else? What else is it that's keeping them from obtaining
Mhm.
jobs? Conflict resolution, time management, money management, right? Family management, dealing with change, dealing with, attitudes, changing your attitudes, having that belief in yourself, right?
Yeah.
Really thinking about your values. Who are you doing this for? Your motivation, right? And thinking about why it's important to do these things, right? Because when stuff gets tough and you don't have a reason for doing things, why are you going to do it? Right. And
Yeah.
so, it went from a 2-day class, we turned it into a three-week class, and we saw a lot of positive results. But, if you want to check a box, there always is ways to check a box.
Mhm.
We
Yep.
can make our monthly contacts. We can, make sure that and there's ways that we can do that. We can hit our numbers. But if that's the culture of hitting numbers, then, is it really a service culture? Is it,
Right.
and what is the accountability? It's a culture of accountability to hitting numbers. Who should we be accountable to? We should be
Right.
accountable to our customers,
Right.
right? And that's the challenge. Like you said, your idea is my accountability is to my customers because they're going off of aid, right?
Mhm.
And the organization's telling you, no, your accountability is to hit your numbers,
Right.
right? And so, that's a misalignment. That's a misalignment. And that, people get that wrong a lot of times when they're thinking about what they're doing because people are in the day-to-day muck. They're just trying to feed their families and take care of themselves and do their things. And how often do they think about, I'm doing this for the greater good, right? And like you said, you got into human services and I didn't expect to be in human services. I thought I was going to be a high school history teacher and I realized I didn't want to
Mhm.
teach high school. Right. And
Mhm.
so, luckily I found a job and I kind of fell into human services and but I fell into a passion. I fell into something that I could relate to. And if I'm making a difference with a family, right now I'm making a difference with 110 families, right?
Mhm.
As a case manager and as a supervisor, I'm helping staff with 100, 110 cases, right? So 900, cases, right? And then as an instructor, teaching workshops for the county. I'm working with 30 clients a week over 3 weeks, over a year, right? I mean, just do the math over, how many families are being
Mhm.
impacted there. And now working for UC Davis and or just being able to teach what I've been doing the last 18 years, not just families, but the workers who work with their families, the supervisors who manage those workers, those leaders who make decisions about how those workers interact with clients, and the state orgs who, provide a lot of the guidelines on how families are going to ultimately be impacted. I just think of it such a, that idea of impact and motivation. It just keeps me motivated. I have no choice but to be accountable to the stakeholder. I want to make sure I provide a meaningful class to everyone I teach, whether it's an admin assistant in Marin County like I did yesterday, or senior leaders at California Health and Human Services last week, right?
Mhm.
And so, I want to make sure I provide a good class to them, but ultimately the stakeholder that I'm most focused on is the person that's using their services or their product. And if we ever lose sight of that, that's where we get misguided. And so, how do we get back to serving that customer who doesn't even necessarily understand the actions that you've taken, how it's affected them, and may not necessarily sound like they're grateful for it. Right.